Dawson awoke to the serene cooing of morning doves as the sun began to break over the horizon. Rubbing his eyes, he flung the covers away from his bed of straw and stood with a stretch.
"Oh, good, you've awoken."
The voice of his second was a welcome chorus to his rested ears. Anaya was watching him, her arms crossed firmly across her full chest.
"Your breakfast was getting cold."
"I've told you before not to trouble yourself with that."
Dawson yawned.
"'Tis no trouble. You are a leader. What sort of second would I be if I did not try and honor your role within our clan?"
Anaya replied with a smirk.
"Forget it. You're not ready to conduct the harvest ritual,"
the youthful leader proclaimed, knowing full well what his assistant had been after with all of her blatant flattery.
"Fine. I'll just give your cold breakfast to the hounds then,"
she objected.
"Go right ahead."
Dawson shook his head, watching her storm away from the barn and down the opposite side of the hill. That girl was absolutely insatiable. Dawson marveled at the soft yellow butterflies drifting along the chilly breeze as he stepped out of his dwelling. The presence of the small insects marked the end of winter and the start of an early spring. He could indeed begin preparations for the harvest ritual. Just as soon as the last of the winter crop had been reaped. Guinevere emerged from the forest and out into the sunlight. She held her navy cloak firmly around her shoulders as the wind ravaged her soft white skin. Nevertheless, she remained vigilant in her quest to find some suitable vegetation to take back to the hovel with her. Garrett had forbade her from entering the city, but he hadn't said anything about searching the forest, which was exactly what she had been doing for the last half hour. A nagging tug at the back of her mind told her that the thief undoubtedly had realized that she was gone by now, and that she was in for quite the lecture upon her return. But Guinevere couldn't have cared less. She had ingredients to collect and recipes to make. Her green eyes scanned the area before her. This forest clearing was larger than the others, lacking even in bushes and rocks. Instead, were several lovingly tilled mounds of earth, blocked off by a light iron fence. The young woman stepped closer, upon noticing a family of rabbits huddled around one such mound. That's when she observed that each of these soil rows held plant life. Guinevere's heart skipped with delight. Finding the ingredients she sought had just gotten a little easier.
"I could have sworn that I closed that last night,"
Dawson murmured, pushing his way through the partially opened flimsy metal gate. Upon entering the grower's field, a rather unexpected surprise was waiting for him. A red-haired woman was squatting before a row of strawberry bushes, and several eaten stems lay strewn around her feet. Her light blue outfit was still damp with early morning dew, and her body shivered in the breeze.
"Hey, you!"
he shouted, causing the young woman to jolt upright. Guinevere faced him, strawberry juice still covering her lips. Rather than fleeing, she cowered as he approached her, giving Dawson a chance to look her over. She looked to be about his age, perhaps maybe a year or two younger. Her bangs were messy and long, trailing outwards into a sea of ruby and crimson waves. And even in its unkempt state, Dawson had to admit, it was beautiful. But her most striking feature by far were those yellow and green eyes. Knowing that there had to be a reason as to why this girl would be stealing from the community garden, Dawson opted not to yell at her further. He could see that she was already terrified of him.
Hey, it's alright. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm Dawson, and you are?
He lowered his posture and knelt down upon the muddy earth, gently and quietly waiting for his new guest to reply. Guinevere slowly opened her mouth.
Guinevere.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Guinevere. You must be starving. I've never seen anyone just eat directly out of the garden like that. We usually wash and prepare our harvest first.
He smiled. Guinevere's pupils retracted. Simultaneously, she dropped the strawberries she had hoarded away in her basket. They rolled down the incline to the young man's feet.
I'm sorry. I didn't know that these plants belonged to you. I thought that they were part of the forest.
She pleaded. Dawson cocked his head.
It's alright. I'm actually more concerned as to why you came here.
He began picking up the fruit at his feet.
Are you in some kind of trouble?
No, sir. I was just trying to find some food for...
Guinevere stopped herself. She knew better than to speak openly about her thief.
Shh.
Dawson comforted, standing. He walked over to the petrified intruder and offered a hand to help her to her feet.
No need to explain. The growers welcome all.
The growers?
Guinevere asked, standing on her own.
Yes.
Dawson said, motioning to the carefully tended field of fruits and vegetables all around him.
We work together with nature and with the forest herself to better the future of the city. There is no reason to keep the two apart, and the members of my group are doing everything in their power to help the people to understand this.
It sounds like you have quite the task laid out for you then. I'm sorry if I made it harder by trespassing.
Guinevere apologized.
No need to apologize. You're most welcome here, Guinevere. Come on, let's get a real meal inside your belly, and then you can tell me all about yourself.
Guinevere smiled, a bit surprised at this young man's hospitality.
I'd really love to, but I must be getting back to the city.
She protested.
You still have a family back there?
Guinevere closed her eyes. A warm smile danced across her face, sunlight bathing her delicate facial features in a soft orange hue.
Yes, they're my family.
Well then.
Dawson approached her, his form blotting out the newly risen sun and casting a shadow down upon her. He was looking down at her, a warm look dazzling in his own green eyes.
You should gather up as much as you can, so that they have enough to eat.
Guinevere gripped the handle of her basket tighter and smiled up at him.
Thank you, Dawson.
She spoke softly as he began to pile various foodstuffs within her wicker basket.
It's no trouble, milady. Just be sure to remember the growers when you're enjoying these bountiful gifts.
To her surprise, the young man bent down and held out his hand, passing her one last ripe, juicy apple.
And, if at all possible, myself.
I shall. Farewell.
Guinevere nearly tripped over a pile of dirt as she scampered off back into the surrounding wood. Dawson watched her go, and his eyes lit up with both desire and happiness.
Farewell, sweet Guinevere.
By the time a wet and muddy Guinevere had returned to the crippled barrack, Garrett was beside himself with apprehension. He glowered down at her dirty hair and soaked clothes.
Guinevere, I thought I told you not to leave. Where the taff did you go?
I went to get some ingredients from the forest so I could cook for you.
She explained sheepishly, holding up her full basket. The thief's brows furrowed. He had never been so enraged at her before. Carrots? Apples? No. These were not from the forest, and Guinevere knew it. He clasped her wrists tightly, causing Guinevere to drop her goods. As fruit and vegetables scattered to the floor, Garrett stared into her with furious eyes that reflected his darkest fears.
Do you think I'm stupid, Guinevere? Tell me the truth. Where did you go?
He demanded. Guinevere watched his eyes dance. They quivered, full of deep concern and emotion. She hesitated, before leaning in to kiss his hot cheek. The thief looked at her as she withdrew, surprised by the sudden sign of her affection.
I told you! The forest! If you're this upset, I promise I won't go back there. Please calm down, Garrett.
Her casual words only caused his anger to mount.
Calm down? The City Watch wants my head on a silver platter. Simmons wants you back within his clutches, and you're telling me to calm down? That's easy for you to say, Guinevere. You knew the entire time that you were safe. Your words are as selfish as your actions.
I know it was wrong of me to worry you, but I just couldn't help myself. I really wanted to cook for you and Basso today.
She whimpered.
And I'm not lying. I did go into the forest. There was a garden there. A nice man gave these things to me and...
Wait, just a minute. Someone saw you?
The look in his eyes at that moment caused Guinevere to recoil. She tried to pull her wrists free of his grasp, but Garrett only tightened his grip around them. Seeing that she could not flee, Guinevere instead turned away from him.
Garrett, it was okay. He was nice.
You'll never learn, will you?
The thief exhaled a long sigh, trying desperately to curb his mounting rage.
How many times do I have to say it? Down here, Guinevere, I am the only one you can trust.
That can't be true. Not everyone is out to get me, Garrett.
She argued.
I envy you, kid. Your innocence allows you to believe that people are inherently good. You're blessed, for now.
He retracted his hands and stared out the open window.
But eventually, that sort of thinking, that sort of trust, it's gonna get you killed.
She watched him as he spoke, ashamed that she had both worried and disappointed him so.
Garrett, I know that I still have a lot to learn about life from you. I know.
She walked over to his side and cautiously continued to address him.
You won't learn anything if you refuse to be taught.
He huffed.
I used to tell Erin the same thing. She never listened to me either.
He rubbed his aching temples.
I'm truly sorry. I just wanted to do something nice for you. I thought I'd be safe.
Guinevere commented.
Did I let you down?
She asked, afraid of the answer. Garrett didn't speak to her.
Perhaps it was my fault.
He finally spoke, his eyes still locked into the void of the dark alley before him.
What do you mean?
I've never been the teacher type. I've always been firmly set in my ways. Maybe that's why the two of you never respected my influence.
Guinevere began to tremble at his statement.
But I do respect you, Garrett. I thought you knew that.
She retorted, upset by his assumption. The thief finally looked down at her.
Maybe so. But you do not respect my teachings. Now I've come to the realization that you're not about to change. You're more stubborn than I am.
With a defeated groan, Garrett extended his hand and cupped his large palm around her shoulder. She stared up at him through wide, unsuspecting green eyes. He smiled warmly at her.
But I'm not about to give up on you, Guinevere.
But I thought you just said...
She smiled, happy that Garrett's temper had mellowed. Rather worriedly, she crouched down and began to put the food back into her discarded basket.
So, you're not going to hate me for this?
The thief reached over and placed his other hand on her opposite shoulder. He leaned forward and kissed her forehead.
I could never hate you.
His tone was solemn and comforting.
Just try to stay either by my side at all times, or if you can't do that, at least away from everyone else.
Will do.
The sudden pounding caused Guinevere to yelp. Instinctively, she gripped a hold of Garrett and buried her face into his chest. Pushing her away, Garrett raced over to a pile of moldy crates. Most of them were full of rubbish and dust, but some of them were empty. The thief pointed deliberately to one such crate, an unspeakable concern written across his face.
Get in!
He snarled. Guinevere nodded and did as she was told. Once she was inside, Garrett looked down into the crate, giving her a glower of dire sincerity.
Garrett?
Guinevere, no matter what happens, do not come out of that crate until I come back for you.
Wait! Where are you going?
To check on Basso.
Was all he answered her with, taking up his dagger. She watched as Garrett closed the lid, after which, Guinevere curled up into a fetal position, feeling like her heart was melting into her stomach. Reconciliation would have to wait. There was someone unexpected braying on the door.